Here we are in lesson 2, and again we can see you on your computer, but this time you are writing code. As we said before, each kind of file has its own program. This is because each program has its own motor, or engine, and each engine understands its own language. When you write code, you are writing in a particular language. We are going to concentrate primarily on JavaScript, but also we're going to learn Java and C# concepts. The purpose of doing this is because Java and C# are quite similar, but at the same time, they are quite different from JavaScript. The engine or interpreter for JavaScript is the browser. This creates a unique situation for JavaScript because no organization or company owns the browser. There are many different browsers created by many different companies. Java was created by Sun Microsystems and now is the property of Oracle. C# was created by Microsoft and continues to be a Microsoft product. When a company or organization controls a language, they can create a very sophisticated and strict IDE. Remember that the IDE, Integrated Development Environment, is the program you are going to use to create your code. A very advanced IDE can impose strict rules. This is a good thing, but more difficult, and we'll talk more about that later. JavaScript, on the other hand, has no owners. There's only an organization composed of different people and companies. In a very difficult situation, these people organize and coordinate the development of the language. Each company that maintains a browser, such as Google, Microsoft Internet Explorer, Firefox, and others, have to make their browsers understand the new functions added to the language after everyone has agreed upon a new implementation. And now we will talk about HTML and JavaScript. Here we have our IDE and our browser. And on the screen we have an HTML document. Before we talk about JavaScript, we need to talk about HTML. This is because the interpreter for JavaScript is the browser, but the browser only works directly with a web page and an HTML document. It's through this HTML page that we open and execute our JavaScript. This is the basic structure of all HTML pages. This first line tells the browser which version of HTML you are using. Remember that all languages are always advancing, and there are programs that are interpreting the language as it advances. If the browser is older and hasn't been updated, and you are using a newer version of JavaScript, then there will be parts of your code that don't make sense to the browser. Therefore, this first line of code helps the browser to make decisions about how to interpret the language. After that line, all of your web pages will begin with this line. This is called a tag. When we work with tags, we think in terms of open and close. And there are two levels of open and close. The first level is the opening tag and the closing tag. When a tag opens and closes, it creates a box. And the box can have things inside of it. The head and the body are inside of the HTML tag, and we say they are children of the HTML tag. Recognize that right now the head tag and body tag don't have anything inside of them. Both open and close without having anything inside. But both the head tag and body tag are inside of the HTML tag. In this configuration, we say that the head tag and the body tag are siblings. Therefore, we say that the HTML tag is the parent of the head and body tags. The second level of thinking in terms of open and close is this symbol and this symbol. Each tag opens and closes. But at the same time, each one of these opening and closing tags opens and closes. Beginning with the HTML opening tag, we can see that it opens with a left arrow and closes with a right arrow. Understand that the interpreter reads the code from top to bottom and left to right. Therefore, the first thing the browser is going to see when it opens the page is this symbol. And this symbol says to the browser that what comes next is part of the language. Every symbol and word that comes next will make sense to the HTML engine as part of the language until we close the tag. And here, immediately after we close this tag, we open a new tag, our HTML tag. We have the opening arrow, the type of tag, and the closing arrow. And immediately another opening tag, the type of tag, and the closing arrow. But recognize that the head tag opens before the HTML tag closes. This means that the head tag is inside of the HTML tag. But the head tag closes before the body tag opens. This means that the body tag is not inside of the head tag. If we put letters in our body tag and refresh the browser, we'll see these words in our browser. And we can do the same thing with our head tag, and we'll see these letters as well. But this is something you don't want to do. We designate the area of the head for information that helps the browser understand the page. Similar to the first line telling the browser which version we are using. When something is going to be shown on the screen, we want to put this in the body. An example of something that goes in the head is the title of the page. Right now, this isn't going to show anything because there isn't any data, letters or words inside the title box. But when we put something inside of the title box, we'll see it in the tab of our browser. And when we remove it again, you see that the tab only has the name of the file. With words in the title, without words in the title. And as you can see, the title box is inside of the head box. The head is a child of the HTML tag, and the title is a child of the head tag. Therefore, the title is the grandchild of the HTML tag. Another thing, and something very important, is that you can put information inside of the opening tag. This information talks to the browser, giving it information about the data that's going to come after the opening tag. The information inside of the box. With this information, when we refresh the browser, we'll see that the color of the data has changed. This information inside of the yellow box is called CSS code. CSS is kind of like a language, but not necessarily a language. CSS is a structure or way of organizing instructions to the HTML tags. We'll talk more about that later. But there are many styles for controlling the page. And it's with this that we can talk about JavaScript. The purpose of JavaScript is to make your web page dynamic. Without JavaScript, your page is static. You can write this code that you see on the screen and load it to a server, and then someone can download it and see your page. But this information is static. The user is very limited in his ability to interact with the page. But with JavaScript, we can write code that responds to things like clicks. With HTML, we can put a button on the page, and when you click this button, it will activate JavaScript code. And JavaScript can change the styles. In our opening tag, we can add more information. We can add an ID. An ID is very important because this is how we connect our JavaScript code to the box. Therefore, using this ID, myID, we can connect our JavaScript to this box and change the color of the words to blue. And we can add more styles. We can change the size or inject a photo. There is almost no limit to how we can change the page with our IDs connecting JavaScript to the page. And each box can have its own ID if you want to connect to it. There is much more to learn about HTML and its structure, but the information you have now is sufficient to begin talking about JavaScript. And we begin that in the next lesson.